quiet silence of a heart that believes itself defeated by loss, by pain, by fear. Our hope nailed to a cross, our own faith depleted, at the sight of no movement, a body inert. But it is not the end. At the sound of the gravestone rolling, a new story has unfolded. Death has been defeated. Our hope is alive. Jesus is alive. We raise our hands in victory. By His resurrection, we are set free. He blows a wind of life and brings us back to the light. He is risen. Our Messiah is alive. He breathes and the darkness trembles. He speaks and our future shines. By His sacrifice, we are now saved. By His grace, we can all rise. Here rejoicing in the sky, the grave could not hold Him. The veil has been torn. Our Christ has won over death, over sin, over ache. By His power, all chains break. He is victorious. He is the way. He is the resurrection and the life. And by His wounds, we're made alive.
Well, how is everybody this morning? Are you doing well? We're so glad that you're here with us on Easter. And today we're going to be taking text in John 20, 1 through 18. And it says this in verse 1, early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put Him." Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb, and they were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stooped in and looked and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up, lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciples who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then, they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home. In 11, it says that Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. And she saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angel asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replies, "and I don't know where they have put Him." And she turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize Him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought that He was the gardener, and so she says, "Sir, if you have taken Him away, tell me where you have put Him, and I will go and get Him." And "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to Him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. And He says in 17, "Don't cling to me, for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord." Then she gave them His message. Quite an interesting story, isn't it? One that we are here today to discuss. And no matter where we're at today, we're looking at this story intently, aren't we? Most of us have hung our hope on this story. It is the reason why we've made it through the dark times, the tough times. It's why we're here. It's why we've made it. But I want you for a second, considering in this story, but I want you for a second to picture yourself say you go out to your mailbox, you retrieve your mail, and you begin to sort through all of that mail. And if you're like me, you sort through it all and you try to separate, almost like a scavenger hunt, trying to find the important mail like bills and things like that, while also looking through the junk mail to see which part of that you want. If you're anything like me, I'm actually throwing away that junk mail. I don't really care about it. I don't need it. It doesn't enrich my life in any way. There's probably things like credit card offers, and I've got plenty of those. You probably do too. I don't need any more of those bad boys. But then all of a sudden, as I'm sorting through, there's this interesting letter. As I find this letter, I look at it, and up in the corner, I realize that it's addressed to me, and not only is it addressed to me, but the address on it from who it's sent from is a law firm. It's a law firm, and I start thinking, my heart starts beating 1,000,000 miles an hour because I'm going, am I in trouble? What is this whole thing about? What do I do with this? And I start thinking to myself, should I open this or should I just toss this? But curiosity gets the best of me. I open up that mail, I open it up, and I start reading it. And in it, what I find is that I have this distant relative that I don't know. And this distant relative supposedly has left me a large sum of money in his will after he passed away. I don't know this individual. I have no clue what's going on here. And I look through it, I'm reading it, and I'm going, this can't be real, can it? There's no way that I don't even know this guy. And there's this thought in my mind, maybe I should just toss this away. What is this? This is like a Saudi Arabian prince that's trying to offer me money like those emails, right? Like, what's going on here? But there's also another side of it. There's something that intrigues us. We can't just toss it. We have to know, like, what if this is true? What if I actually do have a relative that I don't know about, but just being generous? And what if it's true that it could change my life forever? I mean, wouldn't you at least look into it? Wouldn't you at least, what harm is it to call the offices with the number and just see, hey, is this real? If all of a sudden someone picks up the phone and they go, hello, you know there's something going on, right? All of a sudden they start asking you, hey, can I have your social security number? What? No, you're not getting my social security. You know then it's a scam, and you can hang up. But you won't know that until you investigate it further, right? Because it's intriguing to us. Because deep inside of every single one of us that's sat here this morning is a desire to find out if something is true. And really, I think that we come here today, we're celebrating resurrection, but deep inside we're looking at the resurrection of Jesus much the same way. Even the most skeptical ones of us here have to at least look at it and see, what is this about? What is this whole thing really about? Because today, millions of people all over the world in the season of Lent that highlights the suffering of this man named Jesus. And it culminates on something known as Good Friday that we just celebrated too. And it celebrated with him being crucified, dying, and being placed in a tomb with a huge stone rolled in front of it. He even says a statement as, it is finished, into your hands I commit my spirit. It seems like all hope is lost, but then comes Easter. Here comes Easter, and for over 2,000 years, people have been celebrating the same day, claiming, listen to this, claiming that this man who was beaten beyond recognition a couple days before, this man that was betrayed by his own disciples and executed on a Roman crucifix, they are stating for 2,000 years, they have been continually stating that this individual, that was not the end, that he has risen, that he is alive. Then the reality is that seems like such a ridiculous thought to hold on to, logically, doesn't it? That a man can come back from the dead? Because Jesus, when we look at him, we have to I think to some degree we have to look into the claims that he brings. We have to look into this thing called resurrection because the offer contained in it is just too good not to at least look into, right? Because again, what if it's true? And what if, based off its truth, it can absolutely change your life forever? Wouldn't you at least look into it? Wouldn't you, just like the male, kind of go, the least I can do is check it out? Because Jesus isn't just offering some vague, symbolic afterlife, I believe. No, it's reconciliation. It's redemption. It's a renewed and perfect world where every tear is wiped away and death is no more. Where we are reunited with loved ones and are partakers in a story that the worst possible thing that has ever happened to someone has actually happened, but it wasn't the end of the story. And we are drawn to the story that all the suffering that you have gone through in this life is not for nothing. There's reason behind it and there's purpose behind it, because this life that we live, this life that we are going through, every single one of us with all of its ups and downs, that this life that we live here, I truly believe isn't all that there is. What if there is so much more? What if what you do here echoes into this thing that we know of as eternity? You have to look into it, right? You have to ponder what it means. And no matter how skeptical we all walk into the story, we have to admit that there is something intriguing about the ideas contained in this offer by Jesus, which is why I want to look at the passage that we just read today, because this verse, when we really get down to it, it offers us four things, and I want to just help you see it. It offers, the first thing, something intensely rational. We can look at this and we can hang our hats on, and I want to help you see it today. It shows us something merciful. It shows us something personal, and not just that, it shows us something wonderful. And I don't know where you're at today, but I think we all can use something that is wonderful. Something that is wonderful. Now, in the Gospel of John, it tells us that in the opening of chapter 20, it says that early on Sunday morning, no different than really what we probably did here this morning. And it says this: while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. John, throughout his gospel account, is working with this concept between darkness and light, and he is utilizing these things to show us, because how many of us even today are walking in a Sunday morning of Easter in the darkness with what we're faced with? He begins his account, John, with a play on words from an ancient text found in the scroll of Genesis about origins and beginnings. This is how John, who is also a disciple of Jesus, and not just a disciple of Jesus, but he's also the only disciple to be at the foot of the cross while Jesus is breathing his last breath. This is that disciple. He sees the resurrection firsthand, and he begins to pin something that captures my attention in his gospel account when he says this. He says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it." And I guess the reason it captures all of our attention is because truly, when we're living this life, we wonder if that statement is true. Because some of us, we are very associated with darkness. We've gone through some tough times. Maybe you're going through some tough times right now, and when you hear this, you're like, is that true? That the darkness can never extinguish the light that Jesus brought? Because right now it seems real dark, and maybe that's where you're at. Maybe you're walking in mourning. And I want to tell you that That is how the resurrection story starts. With people walking in the dark. It starts when there is no answers. It starts with people at their limit. It starts with people perplexed and bewildered, just trying to process the trauma of the past few days. And maybe you fit that category. I mean, everything they place their hope in is now lying in a tomb. And darkness is not just a state of being in the morning. I would even venture to say that it is a state that they are mentally walking in the present. Holding hope in one hand, but also mourning in the other. And it's the state that they're walking in, and maybe it's the state that you're walking in here today. And right when it seems that things can't get any worse for Mary or for the disciples, John tells us that Mary arrives at the tomb and she finds the stone rolled away. And the body that was in there the day before has all of a sudden been removed. At the time, she doesn't know what's happened. She's only observing with her eyes. And she goes, who would do such a thing to take Jesus out of the tomb? I don't understand. And she is broken by it. She is beside herself. And so she does what any of us would do. She looks for help. And so she runs and tells Peter and the disciple who John calls the other disciple whom Jesus loved about what she just witnessed. Here's a little side note in case you didn't know. The disciple whom Jesus loved, you know who that is? That's John himself, the guy writing the book. John was a very humble man, as you can tell. And upon hearing Mary's report, Peter and John, they run like they have never run before to this tomb. And in case you're wondering who actually won the race, well, John tells you. You know who won the race? John did. Because once again, John is a very humble man. Very humble. And when John, who gets there first, gets there, it says in 5 that he stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. And then finally, old slowpoke Peter, John tells us, shows up to the tomb. And true to Peter's nature, rushes right in. You see, for Peter, he's already made a mistake. He has denied knowing Jesus 3 times, even despite arguing with Jesus that he would never do such a thing. He's got to see if it's true. He's got to see if it's missing. Because he won't let him down this time. He will not let someone take his body. So he busts through. I could see him pushing John out of the way, getting in there, looking around, and it says something interesting about this with Peter. Because Peter has been wrecked by this whole ordeal. And he runs to the thing that he feared the most over the past couple of days. You know what that is? Death. Peter runs straight into the thing that he had been fearing the most, which is death. And in that tomb, where the person that he put his whole hope in, even leaving his career for, was laid to rest, is now gone, missing. How did this happen? Who would do such a thing? But Scripture tells us that he notices the linen wrappings. They're lying there. He says that the cloth that covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying not just next to it, but apart from it. It was apart from the other wrappings. And what's interesting is that it says that Peter goes in and he saw this. He sees this. It's interesting because when you look at the Greek with this reality, the typical word used for Saul is blepo. Blepo. And it's not used here when talking about this situation as you would typically see in the general use of Saul. No. The word used in its place is the Greek word that we all use in English, the word theorize. He goes in and he begins to theorize what has happened, what is going on. It is a word that means to observe something intently, looking for an explanation or a way to make sense of it, which is honestly what some of you are doing here today. It's looking at it, it's analyzing the data before you and asking the important question of what does this mean? What does this mean? It's what Peter is doing in this passage, and it's what we are doing here today. We are analyzing what this means, because if it's true that this Jesus raised from the dead, it changes everything. And if it's not true, I'll just be honest with you, we're wasting our time. But what if it's true? What if it's absolutely true? I guess I can imagine Peter standing there inside the tomb with his heart racing, trying to make sense of what's going on. I guess we all come into resurrection like that, don't we? What's going on? What's going on in my life? Why does life hurt so badly sometimes? If you think about it, Peter is probably going through all kinds of scenarios in his head to make sense of what he's observing. Probably things like this, like, well, if grave robbers took the body, why would they leave all the linen and especially the valuable spices? Because all of that stuff was more valuable than the body. Who would want a person executed by the Roman government, right? What kind of value would you find in that? And not only that, his disciples at the time, they're hiding out. So guess what? They don't want to be seen dead with it. So why would they take the body? And you can understand how the whole process for Peter is going. But better yet, when we look at this, what about the other disciples? There were other disciples for just the 12, right? There were the other disciples. It tells us that other disciples followed around with Jesus. And I could see Peter going like, well, what if they took the body? What if one of the disciples took the body of Jesus and we just don't know? And he's probably thinking, well, they wouldn't do that. Because we're the 12. Like, I'm part of the inner circle of Jesus. Why wouldn't they tell us? Well, that wouldn't make sense. And not only that, surely they wouldn't risk dishonoring the body of Jesus by taking it out of the tomb naked, right? They certainly wouldn't do that. And wouldn't they have to tell everybody that they were planning on doing that? And then not only that, if you didn't take the spices, what do you do with the stench eventually? Where do you put it? Where do you hide it? You could see the process going. Trying to figure out, what do I do with this? Peter is reasoning with what is before him, and he isn't the only one doing this. So is John, and it tells us that John, as he's there, eventually goes into the tomb himself, and it says this simply, it says that he saw and believed. Now, I wish it was that easy for some of us, right? But some of us are here today, and we're struggling. We're struggling to see it. We struggled our entire lives with it. Because let's be honest, any of you ever seen someone come back from the dead? But yet, for a lot of us here, we hold on to this fact. Which kind of begs the question, why? Why do we do this? Why do we look at it? They are furiously thinking and attempting to piece together what to make of this empty tomb. And I think it is important, especially today, to see this, because the truth is, listen to me, friends, is that so many people believe that if you are a Christian, you just simply believe, and that's all there is to it, that you have no doubts about it, that you never question certain things, right? That we have come to this understanding based on just faith, and we are void of any rational thought beyond what we hold on to, but that would be the furthest from the truth. There is historical evidence of this fact. There are things that we base our entire reality on, our rationale on. I am one of you that stands here before you that has had everything of my faith shot, so that way I could know if it was true or not. I don't stand up here believing blindly. I have put it to the test. And I can say that from my findings, it is 100% true and 100% accurate. And I want to help you see that today as well, because that couldn't be further from the truth. We see here that even Jesus' own disciples wrestled with what this all meant. It took a whole lot of evidence for even the disciples to believe that this could possibly happen, because no one in their right mind is going to give up their life for a lie. Think about that. All of the disciples died horrible deaths, really, besides John. Peter was crucified upside down, history tells us. Do you think that he would do that for a lie? I don't. Would you do that for a lie? Nope. The first nail that goes in, all right, I'm done. Right? I'm not dying for a lie. What would make them die for that? Every single one of them died for the cause of this gospel that we are looking at today. And contrary to popular opinion, Christianity needs to be wrestled with. I would go as far as to say that if your Christian faith isn't completely shot through with all types of reasoning and critical thinking, it will never last. It will never last, because in this life, friends, you will find yourself walking in the dark more times than you will ever be able to count. You will be wrecked by its ups and downs. You will find yourself wrestling with death while trying to hold on and push towards life. You need to find a reason to believe, because life will certainly test whether you believe it or not. Christianity is obviously, and I got to say this, it's obviously more than just reasoning and thinking. There is an element of faith to it, but it is certainly not less than those things either. It is a mixture of both. And I know that a lot of people will say something like, but yeah, Pastor Adam, there is absolutely no evidence that this is true. This seems like just an epic tale. This seems like a fairy tale. To that I would say, I hear what you're saying. But what if it isn't? What if it isn't? What if there is evidence to the contrary? And I want to show you a couple today. Let me introduce you to the first issue that the second century church had. You know who it was? Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene. What you may not know is that an early second century philosopher named Celsus, can you say Celsus? Good enough. Who hated Christianity, wrote what is considered the first intellectual attack against Christianity, showing why it didn't work philosophically, thus trying to prove why it wasn't true. His whole aim, because he hated Christianity, was to disprove it, right? So he starts looking through it all, and he comes up with one main attack. You know what it is? His main attack against Christianity was on its recording of Mary Magdalene being the first witness of this supposed resurrection. Now, women, I just got to preface it with you. This is Celsus saying this, not me. All right? This is Celsus saying this, not me. To quote him, here's what he says. How can anyone expect rational men to listen to the testimony of a hysterical female? Good job, Celsus. And this was nothing new. They would do this, and you got to understand that during this culture, especially, women were thought of as lower class. It was a very misogynistic culture, too. It is no surprise that he would try to attack it from that angle, right? That was considered at that time the Achilles heel of Christianity. Because really, when you look at it and to understand that thought, you have to understand that the culture of that time that he was writing in, unfortunately, held women in such a low view. It was very much what we would consider a misogynistic culture today. And perhaps what is more intriguing in light of this argument from Celsus is that every gospel account, you know what it does across the board with Matthew, with Mark, with Luke, and with John, every gospel account. You know who it has as the first witnesses? Women. Women. Matthew, it's women. Mark, it's women. Luke, it's women. John, it's women. And Celsus is thinking, why in the world would you do that? Because no man would believe based off the testimony, as he would quote, a hysterical woman. But fast forward to today, and we wouldn't even look at it as the Achilles heel. We wouldn't even venture to say, how did Christianity live beyond that? To where even today, millions of people will still be sitting in seats just like you, listening to a message of hope about this day. But you fast forward, like I said, and that isn't the Achilles heel, and you may be going like, well, why isn't the Achilles heel today, Adam? Well, easy. Because historians today would look at a story like this and they would say, why in the world would you create a story about a man who rose from the dead in this culture and have women as the first witnesses in a culture that would never take it seriously in the first place? It would have never been believed based off their testimony. Why would you even put that in there? It would be better for you to lie about it and say it was Peter, right? Because at least to them in that culture, it would basically look like, well, okay, it's a little more credible than that. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. You would say, if it was a man, it would be more true, is what they would say at the time. But historians would look at this and they would say that the only logical explanation for this is if, in fact, it is true that the first eyewitnesses' accounts of the resurrection of Jesus were, in fact, women. Because there would be no other reason to put it in there to devalue the story at the time if it wasn't true. When you think about the accounts, why would Peter want everybody to know, even us here today, how badly he screwed up? You don't put that in there as a guy that's supposed to be the hero of Christianity. But he wants you and me to know that no matter how far you fall away from God, that there is hope. There is no other reason to write the account the way that we have them. And here is why that is important, because the writers of the account wanted you to know that it is true. It's not myth. You may think it crazy that a woman would go and see it, but that's exactly how it happened. And Paul lets us know something also interesting. You know what that is? Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, 5 through 7, which is a document believed to be written, listen to this, 20 years after the resurrection of Jesus. 1 Corinthians 15 is believed by most scholars to be a document that was written on early church histories within 20 years of the resurrection. And Paul is telling everybody reading this in Corinth that Jesus was seen by Peter and then by the 12. After that, he was seen by more than 500 of his followers. At one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have died. Then he was seen by James and later by all the apostles. Paul writes that this is public knowledge at the time that he is living. That it's not just the apostles that have seen him. There were 500 accounts of there were hundreds and hundreds of people that claim that they have seen this risen Jesus. Why would he lie about it? He too will die for this very faith. I mean, Peter and John needed evidence to believe. We see that, but when I look at it, I think about Mary Magdalene. Because Mary Magdalene needed more than just evidence. What she actually needed was to actually see Jesus. And in this moment, man, we see the mercy and the grace of Jesus, don't we? Why does she need to see Jesus may be the question, because for centuries before Jesus and for centuries after Jesus, you know what was common? Is that there were always these messianic pretenders who would claim to be the promised Messiah. That was what was known, stating that they were going to lead Israel in victory over their oppressors' rule. That would be the Roman Empire of this day. There would always be people that say, we'll overthrow them and we will be the individuals that will lead you into God's promise for you. But the problem would be in every situation, they would have this incredible rise to prominence, but then they would be snuffed out and killed by the very oppressors that they were trying to overthrow. And at the moment that this would happen, everyone following these messianic pretenders, you know what they do? They're like, oh well, I guess that wasn't him. And they would go on about their day. But you know what? As you look through history at all these messianic pretenders, you know what none of their followers ever did? Not one of them ever said, wait a second. No, he's not dead. He's alive. Not one of them said that. They just went on and moved to the next one. But the followers of Jesus are completely different. They don't say that he's just dead. They don't just move on. They say something completely different. They say, he is alive. And not only that he's alive, I mean, that could be cool for a second. That could be cool for morning. But no, they give their lives to this thing. He's alive. And so it begs the question, what did they see? Why? Why do we look at this? Why? Because some Jews believe in resurrections, but they believed it would be for all the righteousness at the end of time. No Jew seemed to believe that a resurrection, especially in the middle of history, by one person ahead of everybody else, was ever possible. So Jesus stating that he does this, and his followers and disciples saying this is what happened, that would be preposterous. Nor did any Jew believe it possible that a human could be God. And here is what we know. We can look at the end of John 20 to where a man named Thomas, who said he would not believe that Jesus rose from the dead until he puts his hand in Jesus' side and he could put his hands in his wounds. And then you know what happens? Jesus meets Thomas right where he is and lets him do exactly what he needs to believe. And upon doing this, you know what Thomas says? He says, my Lord and my God. And overnight, literally overnight, everything changes. We see hundreds of people who were hiding from the fallout of following this crucified Messiah, all of a sudden, overnight, have their entire worldview changed. In a moment, in an instance, they begin worshiping a man as God. They begin to stand in opposition to the Roman governor by even making statements like this: Jesus is King. When before, a couple days ago, they would never say anything like that. They go from hiding in the dark to challenging openly in the light, even giving their life for this very thing. And I love what Japanese writer Husako Endo writes about the resurrection. I want you to listen to this. He says, if you don't believe in the resurrection, you will be forced to believe that something hit the disciples that was every bit as amazing, maybe different, yet of equal force in its electrifying intensity. For if we try to explain the changed lives of the early Christians, you will find yourself making leaps of faith as great as if you had believed in the resurrection to start with. To be honest, I could stand up here and I could go for days detailing evidence for the resurrection's authenticity. The truth is, time doesn't permit me to do that. But what I do want to point out is how the resurrection is intensely merciful, because some of you need to know that here this morning. I just want you to take a look at Mary, who is the first person to see the resurrected Jesus. This woman who has been beside Jesus through literally the whole ordeal. From the foot of the cross to the opening of the tomb, she has been there. Mary, she loves Jesus. In fact, she is loyal to Jesus so much that it propels her to go to this tomb daily to provide spices so the body would not smell. She is fiercely loyal. And not only that, we see that she is wrecked at the sight of this empty tomb. Because her understanding, honestly, if you really think about it, her understanding of Jesus is far too small. Her understanding of Jesus is far too small, and despite how much she loves Jesus, she is looking for a dead Jesus. No matter how much she loves Jesus, no matter how loyal she is to Jesus, in the moment, she still believes that she is looking for a dead Jesus. She is looking for a Jesus that makes sense to, well, her worldview. Because she doesn't have room at the time for a risen Jesus. Because logically, it doesn't make sense. In essence, I want you to listen to this. She shows up to Easter. She shows up to Easter with a view of Jesus that was way too small. Because up to this point, she sees Jesus as just a wonderful rabbi or teacher or maybe a miracle worker. Maybe some of you view it this way too. Maybe, just possibly, maybe some of us are entering into Easter with a view of Jesus that's too small. Maybe we're looking for a dead Jesus, when we need to be looking for a risen Jesus. She had heard him say that he was the light of the world. She had heard him say that he was going to judge the entire world when he came back. And she heard him say that he was going to die and rise. She heard him say all of these things, but she probably just looked at those statements as just nice motivational statements. She did not find them true in the typical form. You see, Mary needs to see Jesus just like you need to see Jesus. And have you ever noticed how Jesus reveals himself to her? You ever read the story and looked at how Jesus reveals himself to Mary? If you haven't, let me introduce you to it. He doesn't just come on out and reveal himself like a lot of us want to, or maybe even like she wants to. He doesn't go like, Mary, it's me. He doesn't do that. That's what I want done. I want to just go like, hey, idiot, it's me. But sometimes he doesn't do that in your journey. He doesn't just come out and reveal himself. He doesn't do it with some grand gesture. He just asks questions, which is crazy to me. He just asks questions. She's broken by this reality, and he says, why are you crying? It's compassion. And Jesus always moves with compassion. He sees someone that he loves broken, and he wants to know, why are you crying? And she doesn't realize it's him. And then he asks a second question. Who are you looking for? Jesus has literally just defeated death, hell, and the grave, but he is gentle enough in this moment to meet a woman undone by an empty tomb, not knowing what to do with it. He allows her to wrestle with what she has experienced, but draws close enough to help her see what truly happens by just simply asking her questions to allow her to process it. Because the process of the journey of suffering and understanding where God is in the moment of it is very huge for your faith. You need a God that sometimes will allow you to wrestle with the questions, but be there, right there in proximity to allow you to doubt, to question, but yet willing to reveal himself when you need him. And as I read this, I can't help but see Jesus asking her, who are you looking for? And not thinking of God's question to Adam in the garden while he is hiding after his fall. Do you remember what he asked Adam? Where are you? Where are you? I like to say it was the first game of hide and seek ever. Where are you? Sort of like that Marco Polo thing. But yet we see it come full circle here. Because inside of every single one of us, we've been searching for something, haven't we? We've been searching for something that makes sense of this pain. We've been searching for something that makes sense of the losses. And Jesus asks her, who are you looking for? She's been running her entire life. History tells us that she could have been the prostitute. Do you know who Mary is? It says in Luke 8:2 that she had 7 demons cast out of her. What? She isn't the pillar of society. She isn't this utmost moral person. No, she's not. But Jesus is gentle enough to see her, to see the potential in her. And say, who are you looking for? Because Mary, much like you and me, she has been looking for hope all of her life. And she had finally found it. But the last time she saw it was in an empty tomb. Have you ever had a moment to where it was in the empty tomb? Where it had died right before you? And you're wondering, what do you do now? That's when Jesus shows up. Jesus shows up when she doesn't know what to do. Jesus shows up when she's questioning. Jesus shows up and says, who are you looking for? And the truth is that she's looking for him. The reason why you're here today is you may not realize it, but you are looking for him. And ever since that day, I think we have all been looking for something or someone that can help us make sense of this thing that we call resurrection. And the challenge that we all face is that no matter how long we have believed, is that we at times, don't we, if we're honest, we all wrestle with showing up to Easter with a view of Jesus that is too small. We wrestle with just how big the grace of Jesus is. We wrestle with just how sufficient his grace is. I think it's why I love John's account and how he shows us Mary. Jesus embraces Mary right where she is, struggling to understand what's going on, lacking enough faith to believe that he is risen. She has more questions and doubts than faith in this moment. And Jesus asks her, who are you looking for? And finally, through all the tears, through all the doubts, through all the brokenness, through all of the questioning, Jesus finally breaks through by just saying, Mary. Mary. And at once, she recognizes the voice. And she goes, Rabboni, which means teacher. Her eyes are open, and she is the first person in history to have met the risen Christ and told to go and tell the others about this good news, which is remarkable. It's just remarkable. What Jesus is saying is that he doesn't save based on pedigree. He doesn't save based off of moral superiority or even social status or how much money that you have or how important you think you are. He saves not just those who are strong and resolute, who have it all together, but I think more so the resurrection is for those of us who know that we have been crushed by this thing called life, and sometimes we are struggling to get up to catch our next breath. It is for those searching for answers. It is for anyone at any time who finds himself walking in darkness, even if it is on Easter morning. And I think this morning, much like Mary, I hope that we are wrecked by the mercy of Jesus that we find given to ourselves. I hope today we are restored like Peter. I hope today that those of us who are skeptical like Thomas experience Jesus in a real tangible way. And I hope that this Easter we may understand what what John means when he penned the opening to his origin story about the life of Jesus, when he says the light shines in the darkness and the darkness can never extinguish it. Because I truly believe and hope that you can come to truly know what that means today, that darkness can never extinguish it, because may we see Jesus as he is, not based off our circumstances, not based off the darkness, not based off what is brokenness, not based off how empty we feel, but may we see him for who he is, a risen Savior who has defeated death, hell, and the grave. And may you come to understand that there's something captivating in this story, that if it true, there is so much hope at the end of this journey. I want you to think about something. If it's true, there's no more death. You are restored. He will wipe away every tear from your eyes. How many of you are tired of crying? How many of you are tired of saying goodbye? I am. I think deep inside of us all, there is this longing for resurrection. But what if I told you it's already happened? What if I told you that is true? My challenge to you would be, you at least have to look into it. You at least have to stoop in, even if it's from a distance, and see what it means. And then when you're ready, maybe it means going in and embracing it all. Daniel, can I have you come and play? Because here's the thing. I don't know where you are today. Maybe you're a lot like Mary, walking in the darkness, not sure of what to do with the brokenness and the hurt and the pain that you experience in your life. You're trying to make sense of it. Maybe you're worried about something. Maybe you're worried about the afterlife and you don't know what to make of that. That is why we celebrate Easter. That's why we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Is because this is not the end of the story. He has made a way where it seems to be no way. He has taken your sin that has separated you from God, and he has taken it himself and made a way and paid that debt. That's why we sing. That is why we worship him. It's at least checking into. It's worth it. Will you bow your heads with me today? The truth is, I'm not here to force anybody to believe in this thing. Not here to make it awkward for you, because the truth of it is, if you confess with your mouth what you believe in your heart, you shall be saved. There's no magic prayer with it. We use those things as tools, and they're good. But we all know that you can say a prayer and not really mean it. I could have everybody lift their hand that wants to give their life to Jesus, but we also understand that it could be peer pressure and an action just to throw up a hand, and again, it may not mean anything. The truth of it is if you want to follow Jesus, it's just accepting it and living it out. It's doing it day in and day out. It's relying on the grace and the mercy of his forgiveness. It's understanding that he has forgiven you of the worst sins in your life. He has made a way. That's who he is. Resurrection lets you know that you can have new life. But it really comes through repentance, saying, Jesus, I am in need of you. I give my life to you. That simple statement that Jesus is King is one that has to be lived out. Essentially, when you come to Jesus, when you say, God, I want you, what you're saying, when you're saying, I want to follow you, it's you making him king of your life. It's you allowing yourself to take a back seat and allow him to guide your life. And if that's not something that you're doing, then you really aren't following Jesus. I don't care how long you've come to church. I don't care how long that maybe you've been born in a nursery for all I care. It doesn't matter. I don't care how good of a person you think you are. The scale will always tip against you. The only way that you make it is by making him king and Lord of your life. And that is what the disciples understood when resurrection happened. I want to follow someone that defeats death, hell, and the grave, not someone that hasn't. And if he can do that, he's worth me taking the back seat. So if you want to do that, I'd ask you with every every head bowed and every eye closed. Maybe that's where you're at and you're saying, I need to give my life to Jesus. I don't care if you've fallen away from him. I don't care if you haven't lived for him. I don't even care if last night maybe you made some huge issues. Today is a new day and resurrection is the same for you. I don't care if you've never known Jesus before in your life, but today something's happened and it is living inside of you. If that is you and you feel this way and you're saying, I want to make Jesus Lord of my life, will you just lift up your hand? Nobody's looking around. This is just between you and God. If you want to make Jesus Lord of your life today, will you just lift? I see those hands. I see those hands. You want to make Jesus Lord of your life today? Just lift that hand up, because it is free to anybody. There's no strings attached. There's nothing to this. He has done all the work, because you could never do enough to earn it anyway. It is a gift. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That is the gospel summed up. And for those of you that have raised your hands, I pray that you mean it. I pray that you'll search for it. I pray that you'll walk in it. Because like I said, it's not magical. It is a decision. It is a commitment. It is a walk. It is a dying to yourself daily, as Jesus tells us. It is picking up your cross and following after Jesus. That is the way. And today, may you come, every single one of you, whether you still stay skeptical or not, may you leave here at least going, that was interesting. I need to look more into it, because you may be surprised just where he'll meet you. In Jesus' name, we all said,